Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is a casual playthrough of Mortal Shell. It is taken from the beta that they did about a month ago. It's a little bit belated in my release of it, guys. I wanted to do so closer to the release date, to build some hype for a game that took me by surprise. So the gameplay you're going to be watching here, guys, is going to be a run-through of the beta playing as Harros the Vassal, which is one of the 2 shells available in the beta, and one of the 4 shells available in the fully fledged game. So I'm going to be leaving in some of the cutscenes here, guys, to give you an idea of kind of the mystery of what's going on, as we wake up in this strange place looking like the star of any good Tool music video. And this is Mortal Shell. You'll notice the chromatic aberration is huge. The settings that I'm running on right now, this is being played on a PC. I have everything on Ultra, and accordingly it's going to run a little bit worse than it would if it wasn't, but I wanted to show people an idea of the fidelity that you can be expecting. And we're going to be moving through the tutorial here. The very first tutorial is going to teach you how to harden. If you want to skip this tutorial, just do the commands on the right, dodge into a roll, and then harden, and this phantom here will disappear. However, you can use this guy as an opportunity to train against the boss that's coming up in the tutorial, because this training dummy has the same moveset as that boss. And if you ignore the tutorial prompts, you can fight him for a decent amount of time, learn to dodge him, learn the timings, learn the spacing, learn what he does, and it's a really clever and intuitive way of building you up to a fight, and I really appreciate it. But here is the harden mechanic against an attacking foe. And the idea here, guys, is this game has no block. Instead, at any moment you can choose to petrify yourself, and during petrification you are completely invincible. However, if you are attacked, it will be broken. And it has a cooldown in the bottom left. You'll see that circular bar filling up. You can only harden when that bar is full, so you have to tactically use it. But where it gets really interesting, and the part of the game that is the hardest to understand at first, but once you do, you understand that this is a really, really interesting and creative mechanic, is the concept that you can use this at any time. So you can harden during almost any animation, and it leads to some very interesting setups, because if you harden during an animation, when you get interrupted, when somebody hits you and breaks your state, you will continue the animation that you're doing. And you can do this to set up some nasty frame traps and some nasty unorthodox approaches to combat. And here is going to be our first fight of the beta. So this is Harden. He is a mysterious character who can also harden as well. He can also do the techniques that we're doing. And this is an interesting encounter because he has a big life bar, he takes almost no damage from everything you do. There are times when he will take no damage because he'll harden and he'll completely cuckold you in your opening. And then there are moments when he can even roll and get iframes, and times when you hit him and it just doesn't do damage. And I don't know if it's just beta jank, I don't know if it's the way he's designed, I'm not entirely certain what's going on because there's a lot of weird stuff in this. And it's the kind of weird stuff that really reminds me of the original Dark Souls when I first played it, where there was just oddities upon oddities and they refined it over time, but it was a much goofier game than what it is today. And I definitely get that in this game too, which is apropos considering the developers are essentially making a love letter to the original Dark Souls. And I think they've done, in many ways, a really interesting job in captivating some of that magic and capturing the feel, not necessarily of how the game plays, but the sensation that I felt when I first played it. I think they've done a really, really good job, and almost no other Souls imitation has given me that feeling. Not even close, indeed. But in this fight, you can pick up 3 mortal tokens before you take it on. Mortal tokens are an item that when you harden, you will absorb the damage that the enemy hits you with, or what you absorb in your hardened status. And for this guy here, he actually has the ability to use a resolve attack with the hallowed sword that we're both using. And if he does that move and you harden with a mortal token, it will pretty much be a full heal. So if you're looking to kill this guy, which can be quite tricky at first until you learn how to play the game a little better, you can use that to essentially give yourself a lot more HP than you would think you could have here. And this is one of my earlier victories over this boss before I understood how he features, and fundamentally you just want to try and use your running attack to punish him, because the running attack is the fastest attack you do. It's one of the fastest recoveries you've got, and it's also pretty much the most damage you can do. So it's really, really useful. And because Harden is so interesting, you can immediately back yourself up with Harden, so you can always get out of there. And you'll notice from some of these, this is the move by the way, if you harden that move with a mortal token, that's a full heal. But the dance continues with the jump attack and the swinging back and forth. But as I was just saying, you'll notice that the role in this game is nuclear. It's kind of interesting because there's a bit of a delay on it, and when you're going into it, you seem to be more vulnerable than you are once you're in it. But once you get into those iframes, it's insane the things that can happen in this game, especially when you mash, which I'm not the biggest fan of it. If you just mash roll to get out of things, you're probably never going to take damage. And to me, I would love to see that cleaned up a little bit, and maybe the game will punish that a bit more as the Nightfish swims from the darkness below here to gobble us and take us off to the outskirts, which is an interesting cutscene, this one. There he goes. I hope you fight that guy, could be interesting. And then here is the full meat of the demo. This is your first shell. This is Harros the Vassal. And if you look in the information the game gives you, this guy is meant to be kind of I think he's like a medium shell. He has lower stamina, but he's more durable. And there's a bunch of arbitrary statistics that you can look at, which is quite interesting, to give you an idea of what he's meant to be. And then you get the Tarnishing Seal, which is the game's... It's an interesting tool, this, the Tarnished Seal, because you can do some fancy things with it. It enables you to parry, it enables you to heal off a parry. Watch this damage here, see that? I'd love to know what hits you when you do that sometimes on this particular part of the game, but there's oddities that are going on here. But the seal itself is unique, because it gives you a warning when something is unblockable. And I say unblockable, that's not entirely true. It's unparryable, which means you cannot get the parry into riposte or parry just by itself. However, you can still harden. So a lot of the moves in this game, depending on their telegraphs, can also be telegraphed on the back of your character. So it's an interesting piece of organic UI. And I've seen this before in some games to an extent. There are some elements that... See it just then? How it flickered to tell me that that was the jump move, which is one of the worst moves in the game. This is Ven Noctivagu. He is quite a pain in the ass when you first fight him, but he's actually just a normal enemy that's been beefed up as a boss. And the only difficulty you'll have here is sometimes you can hit him into his attacks. So you will reset him from a swing, and he will immediately rush you like that. And you react quite slowly. There's the kick move. It does no damage and knocks you down, which is really frustrating. But you can harden to stop that from happening. And there it is again. Takes me out like a beast. Your seal will warn you about that, which is pretty cool. And you might be wondering, you know, why didn't you dodge it, Chris? I wanted to finish on a parry, and the moment he does the jump, I've never parried that jump move. It warns you that it can't be parried when it happens, but there's a part of me that will always try to do it just in case, and I've just never been able to land it. And there's a transition there to go from the beginning here, because I wanted to get a nice run through of the zones. There's some editing in these videos as we go through Fulgrim's outskirts. It's just to kind of showcase the game and make it look interesting. It's not meant to be anything impressive, guys. It's just meant to be a nice run of something that's a bit more interesting than watching me either nuke everything or just get demolished, because you die incredibly quickly in this game. And the healing in this game is also very specific, which makes it really, really interesting to me. And there's lots of it too. There's lots of healing, but you'll notice a lot of people are complaining that they don't rightly know what to do when it comes to getting their life back, because if you can't parry, you feel really vulnerable. But there's plenty of ways to heal. Ah, that was bad. I think I went for a parry there. Not too sure. This enemy here reminds me of an enemy from the Undead Settlement in Dark Souls 3. It is deceptively fast and it has ridiculous range with that running attack, so be very careful. But when you come over to this left-hand cliff here, there's a handful of these standard dwellers. I think they're called fanatics, if you look in the compendium. And this will introduce you to the fighting groups of enemy and the movesets. Everything generally has a decent telegraph. And then every so often you'll get something that's a bit questionable. That was me doing some freestyle and absolutely missing. There's the parry to get the HP back. And then he goes down. Could have used the mortal token if I wanted to top up. There's a chest over here that's going to contain a baguette, a scripture of repent, and superior moonshine. There's an area on the left there that you can roll up to and do a bit of glitch rolling to get to an item, which is an effigy for a shell that's not in the beta, but I'm not going to be showing it in this particular run. Here comes this guy sneaking up on me. There's the harden feature and then the punish. I love that R1, R1 into R2. I just love how it looks. It's got such a really nice flair to that animation, and I really like that this game enables you to modify between R1 and R2. So you can do R1, R2, R1. You can do R1, R2, R2. You can do all combinations of both back and forth, and it leads to a decent suite of connecting moves. And then the game goes a little bit further than that, which is really interesting, but at the same time it's going to really trip up some people that are used to Souls games and Souls-like games. So the input buffer in this game is seemingly non-existent, which is kind of weird at first, but once you get used to it, it leads to some really unusual things. And speaking of unusual things, if you die in your shell like I did just then, you will be knocked out of it. And the game will freeze all the opponents for a few seconds to give you a time to get your bearings back. And then when the game resumes, if you run up to your shell, you can re-enter it and you will get a nice full heal, but the next time you get knocked out, you will die. That was a really, really good example there of why I don't like the lock-on in this game. The lock-on in this game is absolutely absurd. It's one of the worst lock-ons I've ever used. The amount of times it will prioritize someone who is 30 meters to the left of what you're facing, and the thing you're facing is 2 inches in front of you, and it locks onto the furthest target from you. I have no idea why they don't have options for lock-on to the enemy closest, lock-on to enemy I just attacked, lock-on to something that makes fucking sense. I have no idea, but it's going to lead to a lot of unnecessary deaths, a lot of unnecessary damage, and it's almost impossible to adjust to because it's so squirrely at times. But if you can name a game that doesn't have a squirrely lock-on, you're a braver man than I, because they all kind of do at times. It's just some of them work a little bit better, and some of them we just kind of forgive because we've played them for so long. But just be very careful. I like to play without lock-on on this game to kind of compensate as much as I can, but every so often it's just going to be beneficial to do so. We're just going to walk around here in Fulgrim and try and find as many items as we can. There's some cool stuff going on in this game with the items. There's a really nice air of mystery to them. And one of the coolest features I think about them is the familiarity. So when you first pick an item up, the game will not tell you what it does. And I imagine people are going to be really frustrated by this, but I kind of love it. And it's one of those really oddities of you have to leap before you understand what's going on. You have to just go for it. There's a meme somewhere, isn't there, of Shia LaBeouf telling us to follow our dreams, and that's what's personified in these items, because you literally have to consume them to find out what they do. And then the more you consume them, the more you learn about them, and then if you max the familiarity, they will give you a bonus reward when you use them. So it's really in your interest to do so. And then here we have Vlas, who has a fantastic voice.
What of on the inside?
I'd love to know, and I've said this several times now, but if the developers were inspired by Tim Curry's Darkness voice in Legend, and this guy's an homage to that, this game is a 10 out of 10 IGN.
In the meantime, why not take a look at my wares?
But here is a man who's going to be able to trade you your first weapon upgrade of the beta, which is the Quenching Acid on the bottom left. It costs 500 tar. I'm going to be picking it up. Everything else is less important, but you can get some cool stuff. You can also pet his cat if you want to. I like the idea of this, but I think the cat looks a bit shit. And I only say that not to bully the devs or to shame the game, but because the game has such a strong, striking visual representation. Considering this was made by 15 people and it's an indie developer and their first game, this is one of the most beautiful, well-presented games I've ever played. The art and aesthetic and direction of this game, it is absolutely everything I could ever want. I am not the easiest person to surprise and to impress, but this game did it in spades. as we go up to the sister here, and we enter the abandoned catacombs.
Not all places are as friendly as Fulcrum.
So this is pretty interesting, because she makes a little joke here at the expense of a bonfire. And this game has no bonfires in it. However, it has all the negatives of bonfires without bonfires. And as much as this is meant to be a love letter to Souls, so it's going to have a lot of those Souls mechanics, I would have really loved a checkpoint on the bosses, because I think there's no excuse for it, and the bosses in this game, especially the way that they're framed in this beta, the run back to this boss has no shortcut, and is a touch longer than I think it should be, personally. Anyhow, this is an interesting touch. So when you level up at the bonfire or at the Maiden in Black, you will learn the name of your shell, and it will play these little clips here, these little lore tidbits, to give you a greater impression of who you are. And each of these moves that you can buy with Tar are going to divulge more of this story. And they're all voiced as well, which is kind of interesting. There's one glaring weakness of this game from a UI perspective, in my opinion, and I'm really hoping it gets changed. You have to hold a button to get certain tutorials off the screen, and you have to hold it for a few seconds. And I know this sounds like the most entitled, ridiculous first world problem in the history of video games, but I can't even begin to tell you how frustrating it is to have to hold a button when you're so used to pressing it once. And I think the devs are aware of this, so hopefully they'll give us an option, and that would be wonderful, because that's one of those game changes where, of all the things in this demo that piss me off, that really frustrate, that could be tweaked and the game would be considerably better in my opinion, this is a big one, because this is a quality of life one for all the menu navigation and all of the dialogue and like the things that pop up, because it's very overt when you see it. This one might not actually have it. I think this one's just press, so this one's okay. So hats off for that. But the other one is a bloody nightmare. But there is a welt cap on the ground. Welt caps in this game are essentially your life gems, and you'll notice that when I picked it up there was what seemed like a resonance circle on it. That is a cooldown on when the mushroom will grow again, because you can actually farm the resources that will heal you. However, the heal in this game is not instant. The heal is half your HP over a span of, I think, 40 seconds. So you really have to use healing intelligently, and it's not going to be something on a surface level that's going to save your ass. It's going to be something that augments your journey and pulls you out of the furnace if you can continue to consistently play well. And I really like the idea of that. And here we have one of the most dangerous enemies in the beta. A man just riven with blades through his torso, which he pulls out and throws at you with the greatest aim I've ever seen. This guy is practically a hit scan machine, and it's a nightmare trying to effectively dodge it. And then when he starts to die, he rips his own head off and then throws that at you, and then makes that practically hit scan. And then on top of it, it both poisons you if it hits you, and he releases a cloud of poison that's really dangerous, as you can see right now, because I'm completely besieged by it. But you'll notice there's some really odd animation and connection and hitboxes on certain attacks in this game. And I know that a lot of people are looking at this and saying it looks bad. The run animation looks stiff and awkward. The swings don't look like they have any connection. It doesn't look like they have any feel. And I get you guys, I truly do. I felt the exact same. You can go back on my stream. I thought this game was pretty, but I thought it looked absolutely rough. And having played it, I can say the feel of the game completely changes almost all of those criticisms, even though they're still there. Some of the animations do look a little odd, but I'm used to them now, you know. Some of the hitboxes are a little odd, but you can kind of adapt to them. And having played this for a decent chunk of change at this moment, I can say that all of the things I felt that were wrong with it when I was watching it without experiencing it are things that no longer bother me. And that's not to say that they're not problems, that's not to say that issues don't exist. This game is flawed in many ways, as every game is. It's just there's a charm to it, and I hate to say that because it sounds like those people that defend everything with this illusion of, oh, it's intentional, when in a lot of ways it's probably like that. One of the weakest animations, I think, is the riposte. I hate how the riposte just kind of lingers out there, sometimes not even touching the enemy. I really wish there was a different one, or that there was some kind of cleaning up of that animation personally, but that might be exactly what they want it to look like, even though I personally think it looks a bit lame. But that's kind of the game, isn't it? You know, it's doing its own thing, it's forging its own path, and there's a lot of features here that I can really get behind. And I don't know if I mentioned, because I got distracted, because there's so much happening here, as I'm trying to showcase the catacombs and the mechanics and everything, as I get whacked by this dude on his dash forward 2-hit combo. But because the input buffer is loose in this game and non-existent, you can dodge offset, and you can also delay offset too. So for people that don't know what that is, dodge offset is a mechanic that I saw in Bayonetta where when you did a 3-hit combo, traditionally, if you dodge away in a 3-hit combo, you reset the combo. Dodge offset allowed the combo to continue by doing a certain mechanic so that you could attack, dodge, do the second string in the attack, dodge, and then do the ender of the attack. And it was a really, really cool tool that made that game a lot more fun to play and a lot more viable on its hardest difficulty. And I've not really seen that in too many of the Souls imitations, but this game has it. You can do it with the backstep. You can actually do it with a jump attack, which is ludicrous, but I'll talk about that on another video. And you can also do it by delaying. So because the buffer is so non-existent, and because the window for the combo and the hit string is so loose, you can swing once, wait, swing again, and instead of just resetting and getting a standard R1, you will get the second hit in a combo. So what this enables you to do is this enables you to swing once, see what the enemy does, and then respond accordingly. And we've all been in those situations where when you swing once, you knock the enemy out of your radius, and your second hit whiffs. We've all done that in every game like this. In this game, you can swing once, walk forward, and then do the second string of the combo in range to hit the enemy. So it leads to a lot of flexibility with your moveset. It's pretty interesting. It can lead to a lot of interesting moments of control, but it can also lead to moments where you press the button to attack, and you're pressing it a bunch of times because you've been programmed to do that in these games, and then you'll stop attacking because you were buffering on a 0 input buffer, and then you stopped buffering before the animation ended, and you never got the next hit. So it teaches you in a weird way, it teaches you a discipline with attacking, which kind of feeds into the slower nature of the combat. Even though I think once you play the game and you get more comfortable with it, you're not going to think the game is as slow as you think. Because a lot of people are saying that it looks like Lords of the Fallen. And I can absolutely understand that, especially this boss. This boss looks like a boss in Lords of the Fallen. That animation there is goofy as fuck and I don't like it at all. You're completely invincible during this animation. I don't understand it. It's too strong, it's goofy to look at. And it just embarrasses this boss because it's so bloody strong. Here come the icicles as well after you kill the boss. That's a great design. But it's nothing like Lords of the Fallen, guys, trust me. I played a lot of Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen is probably the slowest Souls-like I've ever played. It's closer to Monster Hunter with how slow that game is. This is not like that at all. It's not even close, and it's an interesting comparison because to me, Lords of the Fallen had some really good ideas and could have been a great game, and I did enjoy a lot of it, but it was not my favourite aping of the Souls genre by any standards, and that game was ludicrously slow at times, even when you tried to be fast. But there are similarities. For instance, I spammed the jump attack in that game, and I spammed the jump attack in this game, you know? But other than that, one of the things in that game I'd love to see that's not in this is the ability to swing your sword at proper times to make it a faster animation and take less stamina. Even though the stamina in this game is completely absurd and makes no sense, but I'll talk about that on the next video. So as we lead to the release of Mortal Shell, guys, I'm going to be releasing more of my beta footage, and I'm going to be talking more about the game and divulging my opinions and my thoughts. I really like what I've seen so far, and I'm super stoked for this game. I've not been excited for a game for a decently long time. Gaming's been incredibly disappointing, yet this game, it's kind of restored my faith, and even though it is absolutely derivative in the best possible way, it still is possessing of these moments that remind me of that gaming magic that seems to have continuously been lost with AAA development. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.